Hi, Deacon Ed McCormick here at St. John the Baptist on this first Sunday of Advent, the beginning of the new church year. And I want to welcome you to the season of Advent. And to start us off, to get us into the season of Advent, I want to propose a kind of dramatic topic, and that is I want to consider the Ahmaud Arbery case and what it says to us about the season of Advent. I understand you may not automatically think that these two things have much in common, but I think you'll see that they do. Really, most of us think about Advent, if we do at all, we think about Advent wreaths and Advent calendars, going to buy your Christmas tree, shopping for presents and parties. And so it doesn't seem like those features of Advent would have anything to do with this recent case. But if you pay attention to today's gospel reading, I think you'll see there may be a connection. The reading is kind of intense and filled with these dramatic images. Jesus says that there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. The powers of heaven will be shaken. Then he uses this odd phrase. He says, the Son of Man will be coming in power and glory on the clouds. And we hear these images and they kind of go over our heads until you start to look at the Jewish meaning of these images. These images Jesus is taking from Isaiah chapter 13, the prophet Isaiah chapter 13, and Daniel chapter 7. And if you start to read those passages, you start to realize that Jesus is saying that the coming of God's kingdom will involve a cosmic event. It is a cosmic battle between the forces of good and evil. And Jesus, in his ministry and his death and resurrection, is involved in this kind of cosmic battle. And we need to be reminded of this because sometimes we can kind of dumb down our Christian faith to being nice to each other and not realizing that it involves something so much more significant and powerful. And so Jesus, with these dramatic images, is saying to us, our faith is involved in a cosmic battle with evil. And Jesus, in his ministry, when he was exorcising demons, healing people, forgiving people, gathering God's people around him, he was taking on the forces of evil. He was taking on the very forces that seek to dehumanize us and destroy God's creation. He was taking on the forces of injustice and violence and corruption and even death itself. And so we have to first of all remember, and this is what the Advent season reminds us of, that our faith calls us to be involved in this kind of cosmic, worldwide battle with the forces of evil. These are social and cultural as well as demonic forces. Now here's the second thing that Jesus is telling us during the Advent season. We live between the first coming of Jesus and his final appearance. We live between the present age of hostility and injustice and the dawning of God's future age of justice and peace and love. And Jesus has launched this future age, this age of God's peace and justice and love, in the middle of this present age of hostility and hatred. And we living between Jesus' death and resurrection and his final appearance are both the beneficiary of the coming of God's future age of love and justice through Jesus and the Spirit, but we also suffer under the continued forces of hostility and hate and injustice. And that's why Jesus in today's gospel tells us to pray to survive times of tribulation, times of struggle. Because the Christian life, because it's involved in this cosmic battle, and because Jesus is bringing the kingdom and many, many social and political and cultural and economic forces are opposed to it, it means that our life is, we're caught in between these forces. And if you want to know what this looks like, look at the case of Ahmaud Arbery's death. When the age of hostility and hate is operative, 3 white men can go kill a man who's simply guilty of jogging while black. And they think they can get away with it. And they almost did, because in the age of hostility and hate, 2 prosecutors can pass on the case, think there's nothing there. And as has happened many, many times in this country, these white men would have gotten off for killing a black man, and there would be no justice, except for that videotape. And so for one moment in our history in this country, we saw the kingdom of God breaking through. And you know, as we were waiting for the jury to deliberate, so many people were holding their breath. Why? Because a majority white jury in the South always acquits white people of killing people of color. Except this time, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of justice and truth and peace broke through the darkness of hate and violence and racism. And for a moment, we got a glimpse of what it's like when justice prevails. Now, an innocent man is still dead, but we did get a glimpse of this future age of God's truth and justice breaking into our world. So my friends, as we begin Advent, we have to ask ourselves the question, what can we do? What can we do to be faithful to Christ and the coming kingdom, especially in a world that is often opposed to it? Well, St. Paul in today's second reading gives us some guidance. He tells us and the Thessalonians that he's writing to increase and abound in love for one another and for all. And so what can we do during this Advent season to give people a taste of the coming kingdom, to help them know Christ and his life? We can increase our capacity to love others. Now, this loving is not a feeling like our songs tell us. No, love in the Christian sense is activity, it's action, it's putting the needs of the other first. It's acting for others and acting and being with them, accompanying them, listening to them, supporting them. So my friends, I wish you a very blessed and holy Advent season, and I pray that you will discover the fresh new ways that Christ will come into your life this liturgical year. See you in the next video.